Okay, welcome to our webinar on teaching with technology. This one is going to be on promoting active learning in online classes. It's the first in a series of webinars that we'll be doing on teaching with technology over the course of this semester. So welcome to everybody. If you have any questions as we go along, just go ahead and put the questions into the chat, and I will look over at the chat in various places of the, good stopping points of the webinar and go ahead and take your questions. But let's go ahead and get started. We'll start out with the question, what is active learning? Just to make sure that we've defined our terms and that we're all on the same page. Active learning, according to Bonwell and Asen, is anything that involves students in doing things and thinking about the things that they are doing. Or, according to Felder and Brent, anything course-related that all students in a class session are called upon to do other than simply watching, listening, and taking notes. So, in other words, anything in a face-to-face class that a student would be doing other than watching the professor give a lecture. What are the elements of active learning? Talking and actively listening, writing, reading, and reflecting on the topic that the professor is presenting. And what are some classroom strategies for active learning? Individual activities, and those might be things like 1-minute papers before class starts in order to create an anticipatory set for the class and get students thinking about their current knowledge on a topic. Muddiest point papers, which might be something that you do at the end of class, just to ask the students to turn in what part of the lecture they thought was the most difficult to understand, or any sort of little mini quiz that you might distribute anywhere in the learning. Classroom strategies for active learning might also be paired activities, which, for example, might be a think, pair, share activity. They may be informal small group activities, such as a scavenger hunt for information or debates. Or they might be long-term cooperative student projects, the classic group presentation that the students might do at the end of the semester, the dreaded group work. So, how does this work online? What are the problems with these types of things online? Typically, instructors who want to keep a consistent experience between their face-to-face class and online courses are concerned about two factors. Number one, what might be lost for online students in the presentation of material, the student to faculty interaction. And number two, the inability, or at the very least difficulty, of online students to work together to engage with materials. In other words, student-to-student collaboration that allows the students to engage with new materials. Faculty typically want to know how to preserve quality presentation of material and quality engagement between faculty and students, students and material, and students, so that they can present the material to their online students as well as they might if they were in a face-to-face classroom. And how we can do that is the topic of this webinar. Let's start out with presenting materials online. We can do that, obviously, in one of two ways. The first one we'll talk about is readings. And you have in this slide a really nicely organized series of reading assignments for our course here at Midway. This is for NSG 510, a nursing class. And you can see how nicely organized all the readings are so that it's easy for the students to see what it is they're supposed to read. This is a pretty classic way to present new materials in Moodle. So, a question. Are readings already active learning? The answer is true. They are. Because students have to do the work themselves, they're actually in there doing the readings and digging out the material, then readings are, in fact, active activities. How can we make them even more active? We can make them even more active by requiring, for an example, an opening 1-minute paper forum submission, or maybe a choice activity or questionnaire activity. We'll talk about those more in a minute, that the students are required to do before they do the reading. And that question should probably ask the students what knowledge they already bring into the discussion. So for example, with this series of readings right here, this is the first set of readings for Nursing 510, and the readings are all about kind of the history of nursing science and what exactly does the term nursing science mean. And so a sample question that you might use as a anticipatory set for this set of readings might be, how would you define the term nursing science from your experience in your nursing career, since most of the people in this class are already nurses. The next thing that you might do to make readings more active in your online courses would be to distribute participation point questions throughout the readings, or at least at the end of each reading. Participation point questions, by that I mean the students have read one discrete topic, and then maybe you can ask some questions right after they finish that, just to show questions that would demonstrate to you, if answered correctly, that the students understood what they were reading, kind of like a little mini quiz in there. And those types of questions help the students understand what is important in the reading, and it helps the teacher understand if the students are getting it. So these types of questions actually become a low stakes type of formative assessment, which is a great thing to have. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute about how you might be able to actually work those into the readings, into this list of readings that we have over here. Using 1-minute papers and participation point questions distributed amongst your readings make the readings not just readings but reflections. It actually makes the students engage with the materials and reflect on it, and that's a really great thing. Okay, another way that you might present new material online is through videos. You may not have noticed when you looked at this same set of activities from the first topic of NSG 510, but those top two activities are actually videos that the instructor has recorded of the PowerPoint presentation lecture that she would give if she was teaching this in a face-to-face class. She recorded them using Camtasia and put them online. Videos are great. Question though, are videos already an active learning activity? False. They're not, because they only, as built in their original form, only require the students to basically watch, and watching isn't active learning. The thing is, though, videos can be really important in your online course because they allow you to provide demonstrations or other visuals that you couldn't communicate effectively through a written lecture or through written readings. And if you make them yourself in your own voice, they allow you and your students to feel a more personal connection, which is pretty nice. So, what can we do to make readings or videos more active? Some best practices for presenting videos. Number one, keep video links as short as reasonably possible. If it's possible, we recommend to keep them under 5 minutes. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, I teach Spanish here at Midway, and I break that rule every time. Most of my video lectures are in excess of 15 minutes, so that's not always possible. But when it is, keep them short. A next best practice is to pose a question at the beginning of each video, just like you might preliminary to assigning a reading, to give students an idea before they watch of what to expect, what to look for, and what might be worth thinking about. Another best practice is, if you have a series of videos, present them in an outline-like structure. For example, this, using concise descriptive labels that include the running times, so that the students know how to break up their time. And doing this puts the videos in context for students and automatically kind of sets some expectations about where the videos are going to go with regards to your lesson plan. And finally, it's a great idea, just like with the readings, to embed questions either in the video itself or at the very least at the end of each video using a post-production editing tool such as Camtasia. There's the source for some of these suggestions on videos. That source is the one that I continue to take things from as we go along here with videos. Now, how can we make using videos in our online classes even more active learning? You can use videos as a springboard for in-depth discussion. To do that, you would assign a video, and then after viewing the video, you would ask each student to post answers to a discussion board. For example, they could post a concept from the video that was new to him or her, a concept that the student found confusing and why. So in other words, that might be like a little muddiest point paper. A concept that in the student's opinion relates either to the course text or to a previous class discussion and how it was related. And you could require the student to respond to at least 2 classmates' posts on this topic. That's pretty basic use of the discussions, the discussion forum, and most people here at Midway are using the discussion forums in that way. How can we kick it up a notch? You can make videos even more active by using videos as a springboard for critical thinking. In this case, you could assign 2 or 3 videos and in the discussion forums, have the students identify, compare, and contrast the concepts that are presented in each. They can discuss how the concepts are similar, how they're different, and compare those to things that they read in the course text or other course readings. And also, obviously, comment on their classmates' comparisons. So this gets them to actually look at the videos in a critical manner. What else could you do? You could use videos as a way to strengthen online research skills while at the same time promoting conceptual understanding of what's going on in the videos. In this case, you would assign a video and have the students locate and provide links to a second video which they found themselves. And that video might support or defend or oppose or elaborate on the original video. And if the students need help to do this exercise, you could provide them guidelines for the best practices to searching on the web and making sure that they're choosing good videos, quality videos. And then the students could post their videos and their interpretation of how the video supports or defends or opposes or elaborates on your original video in the discussion forum, and they can comment on each other's video clips. So those might be some great ways that you can use videos. And of course, those same ideas apply to readings. You could assign a reading and have students find another similar reading or a reading that conflicts with the reading that you assigned and have them post a link to the reading that they found and their discussion about the 2 different points. So the same things that you're doing here with videos, you could do with readings too if you focus more on readings in your class. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pause here. These are kind of some best practices for presenting new information, just the presentation of the information. Does anybody have any questions so far? I don't see any questions in the chat room. Okay, I'll go ahead and move on. Other than during the presentation of information, what else can we do in our online classes to encourage student engagement? Well, to answer that, I'd first like to review a little bit what sorts of activities we can use in face-to-face classes to foster student engagement with our materials and with each other. We can have quick, low-stakes strategies, such as, for example, KWL charts. A KWL chart is basically a piece of paper divided into thirds, and the first column is labeled what the student knows, the K. The middle column is labeled what the student wants to know, the W. And the last column on the right is labeled L, what the student has learned about the topic. So you would pass this out in the beginning of class, and you would ask the student at the beginning of class, maybe as their 1-minute opening paper, to write down what they know already about the topic that you're going to discuss in class, and what they want to know, what they don't know, but what they want to know. And then at the end of your discussion in class, you would ask them to fill out the last column, what they learned about the topic. So that would be one low-stakes strategy for face-to-face classes. I'll get it out. Another type of strategy might be a simple 1-minute paper where you ask the learner to respond in anything from, I have 2 to 10 minutes, but it could be as little as 30 seconds and it could be 15 minutes. It depends on your needs, to an open-ended question or prompt that asks the student to kind of think about where the lecture is going to go. Again, what they already know about it, maybe their own experience in that area, whatever. And the purpose of 1-minute papers is to develop writing fluency and to build the habit of reflection into the learning experience. Another type of low-stake strategy that we might use in a face-to-face class are student response systems, or you might have heard them called clickers. And you can use those for quick in-class polls, yes or no type questions, does everybody agree with this, or quick little quizzes. And another low-stake strategy we might use in class are think, pair, shares, where the students think for a minute on their own on a question that you've assigned, and that might be your 1-minute paper. Then they pair with another student and discuss their thoughts and compare their ideas and solutions. And then finally, they share their results with the rest of the class. We might also use some more complex, higher stakes strategies in an in-face class, such as case studies, where students use real-life people or stories as examples to integrate their new classroom knowledge with their knowledge of real-world situations. For example, in a class that I'm teaching right now at UK, which is on information literacy, my students had just learned about the concepts of critical thinking and creative thinking, and so their assignment was to write a case study of themselves and 3 other people from their field of study to discuss whether they were critical thinkers or creative thinkers and defend the reason why they claimed their subjects to be critical or creative thinkers. So they had to apply all the knowledge that they had gained about those 2 concepts to people that they knew. Another more complex, higher stakes strategy in face-to-face classrooms to promote engagement might be debates. Everybody knows what debates are. We all watched one last night. You give the students a topic to defend, and they split up and debate it using the information that they have supposedly learned through their readings or through the class lecture. Another strategy we might use in class are jigsaws and concept maps. With a jigsaw, what that means is if you have a very complex topic in class, rather than giving a straight lecture about it, you might break your class up into groups and break the concept up into pieces. And you give each group one piece of the concept and have them talk about it, look through maybe a reading or work through an exercise related to that topic until they become the expert on it. And then once each group has had a chance to become the expert on their particular part of the concept, they each present what they've learned, and in that way the students have an overall knowledge of the topic that you wanted to produce. And usually you can then produce a concept map on the board of the topic as a whole. And then finally, there are the classics, papers or student portfolios, in which a student researches a topic in more depth than the classroom allows, or they keep a portfolio of the progression of their knowledge throughout a class or a course of studies through multiple classes. So those are some of the activities that we might use in a face-to-face class. How can we accomplish these same types of things online? In Moodle, we have forum posts, choice activities, questionnaire activities, the chat room, and wikis. And then outside of Moodle, we have blogs. So let's go ahead and look at each one of these functions of Moodle individually. I'm not actually going to talk about forum posts because most people already use the forums in their Moodle class already. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with some of the probably lesser used activities. The first one I'm going to talk about is the choice activity. I'm going to just real quickly flip over to the next slide. This is an example so that you have a kind of a visual of what the choice activity looks like. If I created a choice activity for students, it might look something like this. Which do you think has more influence over who we are, nature or nurture? So in other words, choice activities are typically binary questions, things that where you can present two options and the student picks one or the other. And the one or the other might be yes or no, but in this case, nature or nurture, whatever. Choice activities might be used kind of as a preliminary activity before you assign students a reading or a video, just to get them to stimulate some quick thinking about the topic. Or they might be used after a video or a reading to quickly test students, or even in between readings or inside a video, to quickly test students' understandings of a topic. They can also be used in classes for decision making to allow students to vote on things. Or generally speaking, they could be used any time that you would have used student response tools in class. The results of a choice activity can be published after the students have answered immediately, or after a certain date if you want to give all the students a chance to answer before anybody gets to see the answers, or not at all. They can be just for you. They can be private. And the results can be published with student names or anonymously. I'm going to go over to Moodle in just a little bit to actually show you how some of these work live, but for right now, let's go ahead and move on to another type of activity that you might use to promote engagement with the activities. The questionnaire activity in Moodle. The questionnaire activity in Moodle allows you to create questionnaires, obviously. That was a big shock, I'm sure. And they might be used for encouraging students to make quick and easy reflections on materials, or they might be used as little mini quizzes in between your videos or readings. Here is an example of a quick questionnaire that I put together in Moodle. You can see that you can have checkbox questions, and for those you can check all that apply. Or you can have radio button questions, and for those there'd only be one right answer. And you can have questions where the students are asked to rate the usefulness of some concept. And you can also have, I didn't include it in this sample, but you can also have little short answers or paragraph questions. So you can intersperse those between your readings and your videos, either as preliminary questions or as follow-up questions to the videos. Another type of activity, moving up into somewhat more complex activities that you might use in Moodle, are the chat activities. The chat room is basically the same as the chat room that we have here in this webinar, where the students can type Any number of students can join a chat room. It can be 2 or it can be 20. 20 probably gets a little out of hand. You probably want to try to keep your groups and chat sessions right around 5 so that the number of students is more manageable. But chats are used for real-time text-based student conversations. So you would schedule a chat to occur, say, at 9 o'clock on Friday evening. That's what all your students want to be doing on Friday evening. And then the students would join the chat and they would be able to chat text-based in real time. What can chats be used for? Real-time student discussion or collaboration on projects. It's a great way to get students who never get to meet face-to-face an opportunity to at least have some live collaboration. It's a great place for student debates. You can assign them a topic and a chat room, and they have to get in the chat room and have their debate. It's a great place for think, pair, shares, where you've assigned a topic for students to think about, and then they get into the chat room and they pair up and they talk about the topic, and maybe they can share later on in another chat room. It might be a good place for a jigsaw, where students are in one chat room in groups to discuss small parts of the overall topic, and then at a different date they can get together and present in another chat room the overall knowledge that they've gathered. And my favorite use of chat rooms is for a great question and answer session with an invited speaker, a major name in your field that may be in a different location, obviously, than all of your students, since you're all online, entirely online. They can come into a chat room at a designated time and have a question and answer session with students. I think that's a really great use for chat rooms. I teach Spanish here at Midway, and one of the ways that I use chat rooms in my class is, teaching Spanish online is kind of a challenge. So I need the students to be able to interact with each other. So I assign them dialogues. For example, in this case, Mindy was assigned to find out the name, the place of birth, and some other information about Marcia. And Marcia was assigned to go into the chat room and answer the questions that she was given. Now, obviously, these are questions that we've practiced in other areas in class, and then they just have the opportunity to practice them live here. But this is an example of what the chat room looks like when I look at the logs. You can set the logs in your chat room to be available only to you, or to be available to the students that were in the chat room, or to any students in the course, if only a small number of people were in a particular chat room. So in this way, you can look to see whether the participation in the chat room was what you wanted it to be, and you have a little record of all the knowledge that was exchanged there. Another great activity for student collaboration, student-to-student collaboration, are wikis. Probably everybody is familiar with Wikipedia, which is an online encyclopedia. Moodle has a wiki activity that allows students to kind of build their own little Wikipedia inside your class. I have a sample over here on the left of the way that wikis are done in one of the EDU classes here at Midway. I think this one is EDU 201. You see that the instructor has given the students instructions, and then a help feature that shows them how to use the wiki, and then they give them a sandbox to play in, and then at the very bottom is the real wiki, the one that they're supposed to be building. So what can you use wikis for? You can post lecture notes or study guides in the wiki. That would be something that the instructor would contribute. Students can contribute their own work, their own research. So you might have all of your students, instead of individually turning in their research paper. Maybe they would contribute their research to a wiki that then all other students would be able to read and benefit from. In some classes, wikis might be great for storytelling or poetry creation, where each participant can contribute line by line or paragraph by paragraph, or however seems best to you. And wikis might also be used, if you set them to be seen for individuals and not the entire group, as a personal journal for their own reflections on the materials. This is an example of the wiki that I am actually inside the wiki that I am using in my class. You can see where I have had my students have to write a culture paper, and rather than having them just turn it in to me, I have had them add their topics as they write them to the wiki. So the first student wrote on the Prado Museum, the second student wrote on the Royal Palace in Madrid, and the third student wrote on the Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid. And they added a little picture, and if you click right here on El Prado, it would take you to their paper, which was on that museum. And then all the students can see this wiki and benefit from all of the research knowledge that the other students have done. And I can keep this wiki and carry it over from class to class so that other students in future classes can see what their predecessors have written and benefit from that knowledge. And then a last activity that I'd like to talk about with promoting active learning is a blog activity. Unfortunately, except for the forums, there is not a blog built into Moodle. But blogs are very much like wikis in that they allow the students to create, edit, and discuss in a built-in forum or in a collection of posts. They can also be collaborative with everybody contributing to the same blog, or individual where everybody has their own blog which only they can edit but other people might post comments on. Blogs have many uses in your class, such as for, again, like wikis, for students to collaboratively author in an online forum, or for collaborative storytelling or poetry creation or a personal journal, just like the wiki. Since Moodle doesn't have a built-in one, I'm going to go ahead and show you Professor Alice C. Lindsay's blog. It's a great example. That's her website right there. And I'm going to go ahead and break out of my PowerPoint presentation and go over to that. This is her blog for her ethics class. And this is one particular post which she said it would be fine if we went ahead and showed. In this case, she contributed this entire discussion on this topic. And then you can see the students went through after reading it, made comments, and had a discussion back and forth with between themselves and the professor. This blog has been made on Blogspot, which is a function of Google. If you have a Google account, you can have a Blogspot blog, try to say that 10 times fast, just automatically with your account. And you can see that this professor has been working on this blog since 2000 with her classes between 2010 and 2016. So she has a phenomenal set of resources now that she can call upon whenever she needs something, some sort of activity or reading for her students to do. And the students have contributed to this. So this is kind of like a standing lifelong testimony to the work that the students have done in her class. It's really a great thing. So you might be asking yourself, what are some good ways? Maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, I might like to use this tool or that tool. What are some good ways to work these in to my Moodle course? I'm going to give you an example of something called a book activity in Moodle. Book activities are the way that I prefer to organize these types when I want the students to do a series of things like do a 1-minute paper on their own experience on a topic, then read a reading, then take a little mini Quizlet, then contribute to a forum. If I want them to go in a particular order, I arrange those activities in a book, what's called a Moodle book. So the students would see this on their topic, and they would click on it. And the first thing that they would see then would be a choice activity. A 1-minute reflection is what I want them to do. And they would click on this, and it would open up, and their topic, your topic, would be, do your topics in Moodle sometimes scroll too much? This is a choice activity. I find that mine do sometimes scroll too much, so I'll click yes and save my choice. Okay, then they have another question that they're supposed to ask themselves. The next question is, would you like to be able to have more control over the order your students complete activities in? Yes, I would like to have more control. Save my choice. Okay, then I go back over. So these are the things that I wanted my students to think about before they did their reading. Then I can click this next button over here. And here are the readings that I want my students to do. How to create a book in Moodle. So if I were to click on this, it would open up a link that described how to create books in Moodle. So then assuming that my students created their book, then I want them to take a little, read the reading on creating a book. Now I want them to take a little quiz to see how well they understood what they read. So I've worked this little questionnaire. What types of Moodle activities can be included in a Moodle book? If you had done the reading, you would know that all of these can be included. And if you had done the reading, what's the major advantage of using Moodle books? Maybe course organization. So that would be my little quick questions that I distributed into their readings. Now, I might, if this were a regular class, I might put another reading and another quick questionnaire and another reading and another quick questionnaire, but this is just a simple example. So the last thing the second to last thing that I've put into this is, now that you have a basic idea how books in Moodle are set up, list at least 3 ways that you think you could use them in your course in the discussion forum. And so I have the discussion forum linked here. And the students can go to the reflection forum and reflect on the reading. And then finally, I built in an assignment. Choose one of your ideas from the discussion forum and create a storyboard of the activities that you would include in your Moodle book. Turn it in as a Word file here, and if you click on that, it would take them to the place, the typical place that you're used to looking at where you would turn in an assignment in Moodle. So with this, you can kind of see how you might string together these activities so that students have to do a preliminary activity, the reading, and then a little follow-up activity with the reading to make sure that they are really engaged with the reading. Does anybody have, let me pause there. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. I'm not seeing any questions come into the chat. So the last thing then that I wanted to do was to just give you a quick overview of some of these new Moodle tools that maybe you haven't played with very much before, just so that you can get your toes in the water just real quick in how they work. So here I am in a experimental Moodle course. And as usual, since I have editing turned on, I can add an activity or a resource. So if I click Add an Activity or Resource, here is my choice activity. I click on it and I choose Add. And then I give it a name, Test Activity. And I put the question in here, please I'll put it this way, please tell me if you think there are uses for the choice activity in your classes. And then, so that's where you type in your question. And then under options, you would put in your options. Yes, no, because I just asked you to say, is there a way that you can use the choice activity in your classes? So that's either a yes or a no thing. So if I click Save and Display and learn a little bit of patience, then you can see a preview of your choice activity. Okay, let's go back to our Moodle course and go to my little experimental part, and let's see how we would add a questionnaire activity. Once again, I just click Add an Activity or Resource, and I would choose this time Questionnaire, which is right here, and I click Add, and I give it a name. I'll call it Test Questionnaire. And under Description, I'm going to go ahead and say this is a test questionnaire. You don't have to put a description in. Then I'll click Save and Display. And like a test, it has no questions. So it tells you to go ahead and add questions. So you click on Add Questions, and you see that you can add checkboxes, drop-down boxes, essay boxes, radio buttons, scales, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and add a checkbox question just to show you how that works. I'll choose checkbox and add selected question type. It asks me for a question name, test question. Which do you like best? That's my question. Now my possible answers, I just list them here. So I might put apples, oranges, strawberries, and what's another one? Grapes. When I click Save, if I want to preview that question, that's what it'll look like. And most of these questionnaires are like that. So you just have to type in your choices and hit enter as many as you want and save it. So it's as simple as that. Okay, let's go back to our course. And I'll show you how to put a chat in there. Chats are super easy. I just add an activity and I click Chat and I click Add. And then I might name it, so I might name it Group 1 Collaboration. And then under chat sessions, I mark the next time that this chat room will be available. So today is the 27th. If I want my students to meet on Wednesday, I would mark it as the 28th. And let's say that they were supposed to meet at 2000 hours, so I can leave it at that. I can choose whether I want to publish the chat times. I can make them repeat at the same time every day or the same time every week if I want students to be able to repeatedly collaborate at a given time. I can delete the messages, the logs after so many days if I want to, or I can never delete them. And I can set it so that everybody can or can't see past sessions. It just depends on what you want to use them for. And then when I click Save and Display, the chat room, this is what it would look like if the students clicked on the chat activity. And when the chat was available, they would just click there to enter the chat. And this is what it would look like to them. And so if I want to enter a chat post, hello everyone, I just type it down there and my comment appears up there. And if there was anybody else in the chat room, we could have a little conversation back and forth. Okay, and let's go back to our course. The last thing that I will show you how to enter here in my little Caroline's Experiments is a wiki. Once again, I just go to Add an Activity, and this time I choose a wiki, and I click Add. And I give it a name, Test Wiki, very creative name. I have to give the first page a name, so I'm going to give it another very creative name, First Page. I can choose whether I want my wiki to be collaborative or just for an individual. I'll leave this one collaborative. And then I click Save and Display. The first time you create a wiki, you're going to get this to make you create the first page. Once you do that, you get this mystifying thing. And what you have to do in here, in order to, you can type away, type your information here, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to add, this is the tricky part with wikis, and we'll probably do a session just on wikis because they're really useful and they are more complex. But the basics of the wiki is on your first page you can type anything you want. If you want to add links to other pages, like if I wanted to create a link for my students, each one of my students, to create a link I have to type in square brackets student 1 and then space over a little bit maybe and student 2. Then when I save that, the students can see this if it was their name, for example. And then when student 1 clicks here, then they create their own new page. And they can put their own info on it and save it. So that's how you can separate out students' work if you want to. So those are wikis. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and put in, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My name is Caroline Manny, and you can get in touch with me at kmanny@midway.edu. So if you have any questions that come up after the webinar that you would like to discuss with me, or if you'd like any help using any of these tools in your classes, feel free to contact me. Since there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you guys very much for attending.